Welcome to the Untold Story podcast, everybody. I'm Martha McCallum. I'm joined now by Boris Johnson, the former British Prime Minister from July of 2019 to 2022. He also served, of course, as Foreign Secretary and Mayor of London and a Conservative Member of Parliament. And he is the author of the comprehensive, very interesting, fascinating new book, Unleashed. Boris Johnson, welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Hi, Martha. Great to be with you.
Israel says that everything is on the table to respond to Iran's missile attack last week, but retaliation will reportedly not include Iran's nuclear industry, at least for now. Officials say the first targets are likely to be military bases, intelligence, or leadership facilities. That is according to reporting from the New York Times. So you have spoken a lot about the battle between democracies and autocracies that is going on in the world, primarily Russia, Iran, and China against the great countries of the United States and the United Kingdom and a lot of Europe. So when you look at this moment, does it make sense at this moment for the United States and the UK to bond with Israel and help them to take out these nuclear sites?
Look, I think that UK, US, and Israel are all allies and friends, and we're all democracies. And that's the difference between us and Hamas, Hezbollah, and the regime in Tehran. And whatever people say about Israel, whatever people say about the tragedy that's been unfolding in Gaza or in Lebanon, the heart bleeds for the people there. But in the end, Israel is trying to deal with people who want to wipe them off the map, wipe the Jewish state, wipe the Jewish people off the map. And that's very, very hard to deal with. And I think the lesson of the last few years is that the democracies of the world, the freedom-loving countries need to come together and stand up for our values. And that means we can't let Israel be destroyed in that way. We have to stand with Israel.
So does that mean that this is a moment in history for those Iranian nuclear facilities to be taken out?
If you look at the story of the Iranian nuclear development program over the last few years, decade or more, you can see a story of grandmother's footsteps tiptoeing towards a breakout, towards the ability to use nuclear technology for military purposes, and Israel from time to time intervening to prevent that from happening with kinetic action or whatever. And the West has tried, as everybody knows, the JCPOA, the system to try to contain Iran's nuclear ambitions with a kind of stick and carrot approach. But fundamentally, the world is going to be a safer place for the Iranians not having nuclear weapons. And
so is that a yes?
If Israel has to be the power that stops that from happening, then I am not going to weep hot tears. I think that the world will be a safer place.
But the word is that they can't do it alone. They need bunker busters and equipment from the United States and probably from the United Kingdom as well. So would you be supportive of that?
Look, I don't know the technical requirements that the Israelis have, and I'm not privy to those discussions. But if you're facing an existential threat, as Israel is rhetorically, at least politically from Iran, and if there's a real risk of the Iranians acquiring nuclear weapons that are capable of eliminating huge numbers of people in the Middle East, then I think that we should all, in London, in Washington, we should think about what practical steps we can take to avert that.
So, but, Bibi Netanyahu has been scolded by President Biden at times. The UK has suspended some weapons movement to Israel over the war in Gaza. And France, Macron has said the same thing. He's backed off it a little bit. Was that a mistake?
Look, I think it was extraordinary. Israel is under, it's only yesterday that we had the anniversary of the October the 7th massacre, in which 1,200 innocent people were killed, a large number of hostages were taken, maybe 100 hostages are still being held. And, yes, of course, what's happening in Gaza, suffering of the people of Gaza is terrible, but that has been caused by the actions of Hamas. And I'm afraid, I think that now for us, whether it's France or the UK, for us to apply sanctions on support to try to put an arms embargo on Israel in any form is nonsensical. It's incoherent. How can we say we're standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel when we're putting an arms embargo on them? It makes no sense.
It's a good point.
I mean, it sounds like we're standing shoulder to shoulder with Hamas. We're on the side of Israel.
Very clear. Thank you. So I want to ask you a little bit about your political situation and how you view it compared with what you see happening in the United States. You obviously led the Brexit movement, an embrace of the independence of the United Kingdom. Some have drawn some parallels with the America First movement here in the United States. You lost power and your party lost power, and now Keir Starmer is the prime minister from the Labour Party. We have a similar path here in the United States in some ways. Joe Biden won the presidency. Now Kamala Harris is running. Do you see parallels between what's happening in our two countries? And what do you take away from that?
Look, I think you've got to be careful about these, analogies between the US and the UK. As you will discover in Unleashed, I go into this question in great detail, and I explain why. There are treacherous analogies here. The Brexit campaign was about national independence, and it was about our ability to do things differently. And one of the examples I give of the way that was important to us in the UK was it enabled us to license vaccines faster than the 27 EU countries, several weeks faster, and so to have a very fast vaccine rollout to save lots of lives and to take off the COVID restrictions earlier. And that was what Brexit did. A lot of people whinge about Brexit, a lot of people complain about it. Actually, it had at least one immediate practical benefit, and I call attention to that in the book, and I urge people to read it. I think, on Donald Trump and his politics and the crossover between the US and the UK, I think maybe one point of comparison I would make is people need to be listened to and they need to be heard, and politicians need to understand the strength of feeling about issues, and if elite opinion doesn't do something for people and doesn't understand where they're coming from, then there will be a big backlash. And you saw that with Brexit. People wanted national control. They wanted control of their borders. They wanted control of their money and their laws. And I explain how we got it. So
you do, and it's a very in-depth, strong book on representation on all of that. But do you think that people became disappointed with the results of all of that? And do you think that that is at play perhaps here as well?
Look, I don't know. I think it's hard to say what's going to happen in the US. I think that one point I often make about Donald Trump, with whom I had very good relations, and I had good relations with Joe Biden too. But with Trump, a lot of the people on the liberal side of the left liberal side of the argument kind of demonize him on foreign policy. Actually, from where I sit, he projected an image of a strong America. He stood up to Bashar al-Assad, the Syrian dictator. He bombed him when he used chemical weapons against his own people. Donald Trump hit back, and Assad never used chemical weapons again. We talk about Iran. Trump took out Qasem Soleimani, the head of the IRGC Quds force. Iran really went quiet after that. And when it came to Putin, a lot of people say Trump is a big buddy of Putin. Well, I didn't see that when I was foreign secretary. I saw Trump expel 60 Russian diplomats after they poisoned some people, as you may remember, the Russians poisoned people in our country with chemical weapons, with Novichok. And I saw Trump give the Ukrainians, and everybody says he's friendly with Putin. I don't see that. He gave the Ukrainians those shoulder-launched Javelin missiles, which were very important to Ukraine in the defense of Kiev and routing Putin's troops. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I have hope that Trump will, if Donald Trump is elected, that he will be the strong president overseas that I saw.
So there's another book out today by Bob Woodward that says that Putin and Trump have continued to speak to each other frequently on the phone post his presidency. Do you have a problem with that? Do you think that's a mistake as a former leader?
Well, I have no knowledge of those conversations. I don't know knowledge whether that's correct or not. But I can only go back to what I saw, both as Foreign Secretary and as Prime Minister. I saw a U.S. administration that was very tough, very forceful in standing up against Russian aggression, and I hope we'll see that again. I think it's crucial that we do see that again. Martha, I cannot believe that a Republican president, the heir of Ronald Reagan, who wants to make America great again, would begin his presidency by making the Soviet empire great again and allowing Putin to capture Ukraine. I just cannot believe that is going to happen.
You know, it's interesting.
And if it did happen, it would be a disaster for America and for the world, because then, and I say to everybody watching this, folks, if you think that Putin is going to stop in Ukraine, you're crazy. He will invade. He will want to be causing problems in the Baltic states, in Eastern Europe. It will trigger a Chinese action in the Straits of Taiwan to help the Ukrainians, to stop Putin in Ukraine, to kick him out of Ukraine. That is the single most financially effective thing the United States can help to do, because it will be a massive long-term saving in defense expenditure. Otherwise, we're going to see the rest of this century, a lot of this century is going to be wars and wars and wars. And the winning for freedom and democracy in Ukraine is incredibly important.
The Untold Story continues right after this.
Let me ask you this. You witnessed President Biden. What was your reaction when you saw the switch that happened in our election here? And after that debate where he performed disastrously, and then he was pushed out by his party and Kamala Harris replaced him, I'm curious what you thought about that, and what were your firsthand observations when you spent time with President Biden on that front?
Well, I got on very well with Joe, and I think he's a staunch Atlanticist, and we did some great things. I honestly, watching, I felt very sorry for him. I thought it was very, and I'm sure that many of our viewers felt the same. It was a very, very tough watch, and I think he was gracious and realistic in his decision. But when I worked with him, he was a very, very good interlocutor, and when it came to some of those key things, he did a very, very good job.
You didn't see him slipping at all when you were with him? I know there was a story about him not wanting to take a certain number of steps when you were at a military site, something along those lines. Did you ever see anything that made you?
Yes,
you pause?
I didn't. Nothing that really worried us at all. No. And the job of the British Prime Minister is to be a friend and to work as closely as possible with the U.S. president, and it worked well. But I'm not saying it wouldn't work well again with Donald Trump. I had a great relationship with him too. I met Kamala Harris. She seemed an intelligent lady on top of things. I can only tell you what I saw. But I do think it. One point I will make. I do think it credible of Trump to say that had he been president in 2022, there would have been no Russian invasion no major Russian invasion of Ukraine in the way that there was. I really think that's credible.
You do. Very interesting. So with regard to the weaponry that the Biden administration has given Ukraine, and as I remember, you were the first foreign leader to go to the war zone in Ukraine and walk with Zelensky. Yet we have been reluctant at every turn. The United States has, and in some cases, the UK has been out in front of us in terms of fighter jets and training. Storm Shadow, the missile system, is being used within eastern Ukraine, and there were reports of that just the other day. But should we be allowing our missiles to be used into Russia in order to take out the bases from which these missiles are being fired?
Yes, of course. I mean, we've given this weaponry already. We should give the poor Ukrainians the authorization to do the sensible thing with it. I mean, it's not like the Russians are under any restrictions. They're attacking civilian targets. They're across Ukraine. They're doing appalling damage to that country, and they're using these glide bombs, which they launch from air-launched glide bombs that they launch from bases within Russia that are doing huge damage to Ukrainian positions. The best thing for the world is to get this war over. And I'm sure that Donald Trump understands that as well as anybody else. I know he does, because I've talked to him. I know, by the way, he had a great conversation recently with Volodymyr Zelensky. Get this thing over. Give the Ukrainians what they need to finish it off. And, I agree with Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, that the way forward now is get the Ukrainians the financial help they need in the form of a loan, which they will pay back. Like we Brits paid you guys back for Lend-Lease for decades and decades after the Second World War, right up until Tony Blair's time in government, and get Ukraine also, or get as much of Ukraine as possible into the protection of NATO. What does Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Finland, what do they all have in common? They're all members of NATO. Why are they members of NATO? Because they've all been brutally invaded by Russia in the last 100 years.
That's right.
And now so has Ukraine. There is only one solution to this problem now, and it's the three things I've mentioned: give them the weaponry, sort out the finances, and a place in NATO.
Okay, just have two more questions for you, and I appreciate your time. One is political and one is royal, so I'm going to go with the political one first. What do you think about Prime Minister Keir Starmer? And what do you think about the strength of the United Kingdom right now? I know that the Royal Navy has shrunk to just 16 ships. So give me your overall take on how the government's doing and how strong the United Kingdom is right now.
Look, the UK is a P5 country where obviously I think things would be better off if I was still running the show. Of course, I think that. But we're still the fourth biggest exporter in the world, the second biggest exporter of financial services, where we've got a huge economy. I think whether we have more number one hits in the US hit parade, I can't remember what it's called, Billboard Top 100 than any other country. We're doing great. We could be doing better, in my view, if we had. If I was back in charge, but that's just my personal point of view, not necessarily universal opinion here in London, sadly. But that is definitely my view. As you know, I think that we just need to get a bit more of our mojo back. And as for Starmer, you asked me about the leader of the Labour government. He's the guy had his spectacles paid for by a donor. And he had his wife's frocks paid for by a donor. I mean, how do you allow someone else to pay for your wife's frocks? That's what I don't understand. And then the guy got a pass to number 10 Downing Street, which I think, to take the spectacles was greedy, but to give the guy a pass was corrupt. And I don't understand it.
It's interesting to us here that
your brilliant reporters will be following it more closely than I am.
No doubt. It's interesting to me that Kamala Harris has been sharing some advisors of Keir Starmer's to help her in her quest to be president here.
I didn't know that, but look, all I would say is that I think it's the job of the UK PM to be on great terms with whoever is the president of the United States. I'm sure that's going to continue to be the case. I'm sorry for giving an anodyne answer, but some things are too important.
I understand.
And the relationship between the US and the UK has been of huge importance to our world.
Well, I don't disagree with you there, that's for sure. Do you want to run again? It sounds like you do.
No, I'm living a life of blissful, rustic obscurity, writing books, and in case I failed to mention
You're not bored with that.
No, not on the contrary. I have plenty to occupy my time. I got a young family, or 3 young children.
Yes, I know.
Loads of children.
Beautiful
I've got
family.
Three particularly young ones.
There are great pictures in the book.
So I've got a lot. I've got a lot on.
All right. Last question. Is the United Kingdom better off under King Charles or under Queen Elizabeth?
Look, I would say that the United Kingdom is equally well off under both those monarchs, and I think that Her late Majesty the Queen did an outstanding job, and so is King Charles. And I think you'll find very, very few British politicians, or indeed members of the British public, who would disagree with that. It's been an incredible experience to watch how seamless the transition has been, and how immediate has been the taking of King Charles to the hearts of the British people.
Well, having covered all of the 3 major events last year, from the Jubilee to the funeral and the coronation, I can tell you that we are all very impressed with the United Kingdom's ability to do all of those events with just so much integrity and beauty. And it was really something to be part of those coverage. So, Boris Johnson, thank you so much. The author of his latest book is called Unleashed.
And I'm a great fan of Fox.
Well,
Unleashed.
thank you very much. The book is Unleashed. Great to have you with us. Boris Johnson, hope we can talk again soon. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm Martha McCallum. That's the Untold Story podcast for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. You've been listening to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Make sure to rate and review. For more podcasts, go to foxnewspodcast.com. Listen ad-free with the Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.